Well, good morning once again. Well, it seems that we kind of skipped over spring and have gone right into summer. This past week's warm temperatures has really gotten me excited about the coming summer. You know, I went and I tilled up my garden this last week, and because it was so warm, I checked the extended forecast. Looking at the temperatures forecasted out for the next 10 days, and it's going to continue to be warm. Calling for in the 70s every day, so I took a chance, and I know some of you are going to think this is extremely optimistic on my part, and maybe it is. Actually, I agree, it is very optimistic, but I went ahead and I planted my sweet corn. So, anyway, the other thing is my asparagus has been coming up and doing fantastic. We've been eating that, and I can't wait for the rest of the stuff to come up and I can take advantage of my garden. Fresh vegetables, always a good thing. And you know, talking with friends and relatives downstate, they are telling me that all the trees are pretty much fully leafed out. They've been mowing their lawns. I haven't mowed mine yet, but the trees are all full and summer is there. And you know, here they're just getting started. We got little green buds, tiny green leaves right now. And yeah, I do need to mow. My yard's getting tall, starting to get tall in this warm temperature. It's growing crazy. But I also know from past years that as soon as my lawn gets to where it needs to be mowed, that's usually when the morel mushrooms start popping up in my yard. So I'm a little hesitant to start mowing just yet. I want the mushrooms. And you know, I like seeing this rapid procession of growth in the spring. Every morning when I step outside, I can see how things have changed just since the day before. And now that sensation is not new to me, and I doubt it's new to you either. But the awesomeness and joy of watching the earth being reborn after a long, cold, dormant winter just brings extreme joy to me. I love spring, I love summer, I love all the seasons, but I like spring. Like I said, we've kind of skipped over it, we're right into summer, and that's okay too. Spring's going to be really short this year if these temperatures keep going. But you know, this year that feeling seems exceptionally more so. The feelings seem to be multiplied, like tenfold. My excitement, my joy, my anticipation of the coming summer is up here. And I assume that it's because of our intentional isolation from each other and social distancing that is making this spring feel more uplifting than ever before. And I feel in some way that we are beginning to break out of two things that have confined us to spending most of our time indoors. One being the cold nastiness of winter ending, and also of the social distancing. But today, we're going to revisit an old story, one we all know very well. It's about a man and his family that spent approximately 1 year in isolation together. And his name is Noah. Now I'm going to read a little bit about Noah. I'm going to start in Genesis chapter 7. If you want to follow along, you have your Bibles handy. It's Genesis chapter 7. I'm going to read verse 1, and then I'm going to skip down and read verses 11 through 24. So I'm going to read verse 1 and then verse 11 through 24. The Lord then said to Noah, "Go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation." In the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the second month, on that day all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened, and rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. On that very day, Noah and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, together with his wife and the wives of his 3 sons, entered the ark. They had with them every wild animal according to its kind, all livestock according to their kinds, every creature that moves along the ground according to its kind, and every bird according to its kind, everything with wings. Pairs of all creatures that have the breath of life in them came to Noah and entered the ark. The animals, the animals going in were male and female of every living thing, as God had commanded Noah. Then the Lord shut them in. For 40 days the flood kept coming on the earth, and as the waters increased, they lifted the ark high above the earth. The waters rose and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the water. They rose greatly on the earth, and all the high mountains under the entire heavens were covered. The waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 20 feet. Every living thing that moved on the earth perished. Birds, livestock, wild animals, all the creatures that swarm over the earth, and all mankind. Everything on dry land that had the breath of life in its nostrils died. Every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out. Men and animals and the creatures that move along the ground and the birds of the air were wiped from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those with him in the ark. The waters flooded the earth for 150 days. And I'm going to skip down to chapter 8, verses 6 through 17. Chapter 8, verses 6 through 17. Now after 40 days, Noah opened the window he had made in the ark and sent out a raven, and it kept flying back and forth until the water had dried up from the earth. Then he sent out a dove to see if the water had receded from the surface of the ground. But the dove could find no place to set its feet because there was water over all the surface of the earth. So it returned to Noah in the ark. He reached out his hand and took the dove and brought it back to himself in the ark. He waited 7 more days and again sent out the dove from the ark. When the dove returned to him in the evening, there in its beak was a freshly plucked olive leaf. Then Noah knew that the water had receded from the earth. He waited 7 more days and sent the dove out again. But this time it did not return to him. By the first day of the first month of Noah's 601st year, the water had dried up from the earth. Noah then removed the covering from the ark and saw that the surface of the ground was dry. By the 27th day of the second month, the earth was completely dry. Then God said to Noah, "Come out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring out every kind of living creature that is with you, the birds, the animals, and all the creatures that move along the ground, so they can multiply on the earth and be fruitful and increase in number upon it." So Noah was basically in isolation for almost a year. We have been under this stay-at-home order for roughly 8 weeks. That's 2 months. And even though we were not confined strictly to our house, the emotional distress has affected many people. Now, we have our phones and computers, and we do see other people when we are out and about at the few stores that are open. Yet we feel isolated, out of touch with those that we know. Noah didn't have any of that. It probably wouldn't have done him any good if he had, because everybody outside of the ark was gone. Everyone he knew, except for his family, was gone. He was confined to the space on the ark, which he had to share with his family and a wide array of animals. And I can only imagine what it was like for Noah after being cooped up inside that ark for almost a year. What it was like when they came out of the ark. And I always imagined that it was kind of like springtime. Kind of like what we're feeling right now. Everything is fresh and new and just beginning to green up. Flowers are starting to bloom. There are a lot of parallels in this story to what we are dealing with now. And honestly, I don't have the time to go into all of those, but I'm sure that you also are seeing some of those parallels with this story. When Noah came out of the ark, as much as he may have wanted to, he was not returning to normal life. So many things had changed. It would have been quite easy for him to be depressed. But you know, Noah, upon coming out of the ark, he made an altar and offered a burnt sacrifice to God. He worshiped God once he came out. After being cooped up all winter, I have heard people talking about all the things they're going to do once these restrictions are lifted. And living on our main road up here, I've seen this last week, I've seen campers, a slew of campers, fishing boats, out-of-state plates, trailers with four-wheelers and dirt bikes. All of these things of all these people breaking out in the springtime. Some restrictions have been lifted, so they're all coming up and going to do what they've been longing to do for a long time. But I have yet to hear anyone say that they're going to worship God. Now, after being, again, cooped up all winter, and then added on to that the social distancing restrictions that we've had to endure, these past couple of days of summer weather sure seem to be just the thing we've all needed to boost our spirits. And sure, it has helped. It's helped me, definitely. My spirits are way up right now. But also, as I said last week, spending more time connecting more with God has been an even bigger comfort and joy and uplift to my spirit. I also talked about perseverance and enduring hardships so that we can receive the reward of finishing the race. And what I'm feeling right now with the spring here in full bloom, that this is just a small, very small taste of the joy and the excitement of the reward that we will one day receive. Now, we have been living a life apart from each other and apart from our daily routine of what we were used to doing. But now we're on the peak. We're on the precipice. We're right on the edge of being able to not live apart any longer. And also, we're on that edge. We're seeing it happen now of God's renewing of creation as new growth emerges. Now, even when we emerge out of this, many things will be different than they were before. We will be different. I will be different. And that's because God has been working on all of us through this isolation, changing us. And once again, we will be experiencing a change in how we have become used to doing things. What we've been doing for the past 2 months is going to change. Albeit it'll be slow. It won't be like the sudden change that when we first went into this, but there will be a slow change coming out of this. But instead of being depressed and getting distressed about it, be glad. The same gladness that we feel when we see the spring flowers in bloom. The joy in seeing trees starting to grow their leaves again. The peacefulness, the comfort, and the warmth of feeling the sun on your face. Thank God and worship Him for these changes in our lives and for helping us to get through the hard times so that our excitement, our joy can be compounded and become overwhelming. Now, for a closing prayer, I would like all of us to recite this prayer. It's very well known. It's not specifically a prayer, but you all know it. It's the 23rd Psalm. And that will be our closing prayer today. I just feel it's very fitting with our current circumstances. So hopefully you will share in my joy as we read this together as a prayer. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in paths of righteousness for His name's sake. Even though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen.